Hey y'all, it's Dave here over at Gooey Audio, and today we're going to be talking about Albatross, a coloring, texturing, and vibing tool by Gooey Audio. So this multi-effects unit has a lot of attention to detail and a lot of care to really tone and shape your sound. So without bullshitting too much, let's go right into it. Here on the top left corner is the Goo icon. It'll give you the version number, and you can also click it to bypass the plugin. Then you get your save and preset scrolling buttons here, and a display of the current preset that's selected. You got your master mix control up here, and then you have the 5 effects units. Each effect unit, you can select one of the 14 effects, and you can also swap effects, which is really cool if you're in the moment and you're really trying to nail that vibe. So then each effect unit has a master mix control for that effect and a bypass button, so you can A/B test the sounds to really dial it in. And at the end of the effect chain is a volume control, and it's got an optional side chain on there on that volume, so you can pump it up. And I really like that, especially with the reverb. You can really add some cool side chain pumping to really groove. We got the limiter here. You can bypass the limiter if you don't want to limit it, but the limiter in the digital mode will boost up the sound, and in the vintage mode, it's pretty clean, but then it'll clip off the top of it. And then we got an input control here, a master filter here, a tone control here, a width control here, which can squash it down to mono or really widen it out, and an output control. So this whole effect was really based around this vintage tape sound, adding that pitch movement to it. And it kind of dances between like this weird like vintage world that we used to live in and this new modern digital world that we live in today, where everything's processed through transistors and computers. So the vintage tape, it's got wow and it's got flutter. So this wow control, when it gets turned up all the way to the top, I mean you're really warping that sound. And the flutter, as you turn it up, it's gonna add a lot of variation in there as well. And to really tone it down, we have a low pass filter on the wow control, so that those subs aren't oscillating around how you don't want them to, really muddying the mix up. And we have this random control here too, which is somewhat different because it'll take those oscillations, but it'll make them kind of jump, so that the sound isn't quite as smooth in those pitch variations. It's just slightly harsher. You have to really listen for that random control. It's pretty subtle, but it just gives a little bit more style and a little bit more control for everybody. And then we have the spring effect unit here, and the spring effect unit, it's almost like kind of like a vibrato, but it's not really a vibrato. It's just slightly different. You can control the rate, and you can lock that rate in with the tempo, and you can control how deep those grooves are going to be vibrating, as well as phase out the sound, so it kind of bounces between the stereo field when it's out of phase. And you have a chorus. Now the chorus is pretty nice. It's really traditional. It's really right in line with what you would expect with a chorus. It really adds some nice silkiness to the sound, and you can darken it up, and you can add some depth to it and control the rate. Nothing gets too crazy in this multi effects. It's pretty standard what you would expect from those old vintage classic delay or classic multi effects units. Excuse me. So here we go with flanging. So now the flanger comes in 2 forms. You got the digital flange, which adds a whooshing sound that you'd expect. Almost sounds like a jet or a siren. But then it also comes in with the non-digital form. Now the non-digital form was kind of modeled after what I would say is like a Leslie flanger. The delay lines feed into each other, all oscillating, and it's still pretty bright like a flanger, but it's not whooshing like you would expect in a flanger. You can also phase it out, phase out the left and right channel. So, one whoosh goes up, the other whoosh goes down. And you can also, control the color, maybe brighten it up, or maybe it's too bright for you or too harsh. So maybe you want to tone it down. I don't know. I just think that having a lot of control is the way to go when you're toning something. Then we have the wah filter. So the wah filter was really based upon, kind of emulating what a guitar pedal would do. So it's really focused on that wah control, which is an envelope follower to kind of open up and close the filter as you want. As the amplitude changes, you can crank up that resonance and you can control that cutoff, and you can get some pretty nasty sounds out of it, especially when you stack them in the effect chain. And so the wah filter, you can invert the direction. So, you can make it open the cutoff, or you can make it close the cutoff, which is, pretty cool if you kind of do, different filters, in opposition, filtering through the spectrum. Okay, so here we go. We got noise. You got to have noise if you're doing a vintage multi-effect. So we got a whole slew of different sounds to pick. We got some radio static, radio talk. I really like the noise hiss here, or noise texture. The noise hiss is really subtle. It's really nice for laying on top of drums. And you got some bandpass filtering here. And so the thing about the noise unit is maybe, like if you have a kick coming in and you want it to, duck down the noise sound and then fill in the stereo when the kick isn't hitting, you can use the inverted mode. Or if you have maybe a snare hit and you want some more transient on top of it, you can flip it to follow mode, where it'll just kind of add that noise on top of whatever that sound is. So it's pretty nice. It's really, I think it's best used pretty subtle to kind of add dimension, and layering on different sounds. If you overdo noise, it can really make the track sound pretty nasty. But that's just my style. I mean, whatever you want to do, you can do, of course, with our multi-effects unit. Okay, and here's sample and hold. So it's a little bit different than in our other plugins. The sample and hold uses a glide control, and it's a really, really short sample and hold. So it really adds those artifacts up at the top end. And when you glide it, what it does is in essence, it smooths between each held sample. And the effect that it comes out from that is it kind of dampens the sound as well. It's different than how we've done it in any other project. And then we have digital crush, reducing the resolution of the bits. And it's different also because the way we do the digital crush is that we subtract away the input from the output. And what that means, for everybody listening, is it comes out really harsh, really crunchy, really gnarly. It's pretty cool, but it can get pretty harsh. So we have an amplitude controlling here as well as a bandpass filter. And let's see, we have Overdrive. So Overdrive comes with either soft clipping or cubic clipping, as well as a 3-band EQ to really dial it in. And we've got amp sauce. So amp sauce, I was a little worried about amp sauce at first, because I was like, I don't know if this is really appropriate or not, but it turned out really nice. It's really quite a nice effect to have on the effect chain. And it comes in two forms. So you have, the regular form, and then you have the breaker form. In breaker form, you get those really articulate staccato almost sounds, I guess, where you can kind of hear the pulsing, as it moves through time. And in the traditional mode, it's just more, wavy in time, the more beating waves of amplitude. And so you can control the depth, you can lock it to the tempo, and you can also phase it out. So it kind of bounces between the stereo field. When it's perfectly out of phase, one oscillator is going up, the other oscillator is going down, just like in the Flanger. Now we got the vintage delay. So the vintage delay, you can independently control left and right channels. You can feed that delay into itself, and in the feedback of the delay line, you can bandpass filter the sound. And there's, of course, because it's a vintage unit, it's got wow and flutter on that delay, so you can bend those repeats as you like. So the thing about vintage delay, I really wanted to kind of push it beyond what we'd done in the past. I didn't want to offer just another multi-effect that had already been done before. I don't mind having some things that were, included in other products, but I really wanted to take it to that next level. So that's where ghost mode comes in. So ghost mode, it reverses the delay in real time. right? So you can get like some really haunting echoes, some really, really weird sounds out of the ghost mode. And we got retro verb again. Now the retro verb was also designed to be a little bit different than our other projects. So in a lot of projects that we have, if we have a reverb in there, it's algorithmic, right? So that means it's all done through matrix multiplication. But with the retro verb, we carefully selected a bunch of different impulse responses to mix with the signal, right, as you can see here. And it just has a completely different tone to it. It's a completely different style. The wash is way, way different in this project than in other projects. And, we took a lot of time to make sure, like the lush hall was deep, dark, and long, whereas the dimension in the tile room were shorter, kind of added headspace to it, in the stereo field. So that you can really, you can go in there, you can dig deep if you want, or you can just snap into a preset and just enjoy the plugin as it's pre-made for you. And then we have the expander. So the expander, what it does is, if the amplitude dips below a certain threshold, it's going to bump up that amplitude by the ratio. And it just does exactly the opposite of what you would think of from a compressor. It just boosts up sounds, to push the stereo field forward in the opposite direction of a compressor. But we also included a compressor in here too. So you can soft clip the compressor, control the ratio and threshold, of course. And then we also added a gate mode to it, which will really, really dice up the sound, really, really smash it out. Use that sparingly would be my advice. But, if you really want to do some more experimental sound design, it's there for you if you're interested. Then we got the EQ. So the EQ is just your classic 3-band EQ. You can control the mid-range. You can control the resonance on the mid-range. You can drop the bass out of it. You can boost up the highs. So let's move forward and let's have a listen to this Albatross plugin. So here we go. So here is the sound of like a piano, right, or some keys. So here it is, and here it is with a little flutter and wow on there. And we'll add a little chorus. Okay, and so that's that's kind of let's do a demonstration of a guitar with a little flanging on it, so you can hear the difference between the Leslie style flange and the digital flange. So here it is, dry. Here's the Leslie style flange. You can hear it changes the sound, the tone a little bit, but it's not really whooshing. So here it is whooshing. Okay, so let's move forward now. So on the end of this here, we're gonna do a demonstration of some vocals that are gonna go in ghost mode and gonna have a little reverb added on. So yeah, that's Albatross. Check it out on the website. You can hear some more audio samples and pick up a copy for yourself if you want. Thanks for taking the time to check this out. Have a good one.